And, you know, when you were talking, I was calling up the budget from the finance for the governor on what we're projected from 11 up to 18. You know, it looks good. We're going to get better. So hopefully we take care of it. But projections are projections, and things can happen in the world that may change this. And what I'm concerned is that if it doesn't, then I would be one of the members in the assembly that would be saying, if we have to cut anything, let's don't look at education. But I need to have numbers and facts and things. So, but I appreciate all the things you're doing. I mean, you listed all the great stuff, but somewhere some hard numbers would be good. But thank you for what you're doing, and hope to see you here again.
You will.
Okay, thank you.
If invited.
Thank you. Assemblymember Kim?
Thank you very much. I mean, this was very informational hearing for me, and I'm glad to hear each school district's succeeding in terms of implementing this. We heard that LCFF it doesn't provide additional funding, but it does give you flexibility.
Absolutely.
And so I'm glad to hear that.
It is. It's good. Very good.
You know, we all agree also that ultimately the goal of what we're trying to do is to provide quality education. And if this is one way to do it, let's all push forward. I mean, it's still in early implementation process, so we're still assessing whether or not this is going to really work. But my question to you is actually for any of the panelists. How are you using the supplementary and concentration grant funding for your foster youth? I know we talked a lot about the ELs, the English learners, and low-income students. One of you talked a little bit about the foster youth. Can you talk to that?
Certainly. We actually just completed to the results orientation, a mid-year evaluation. You can actually find it online. And we've told our public, green, yellow, red. Green is actions and services are being implemented, and up until this point, our targets are being met. Yellow is actions are slower than we'd like, and maybe the targets might take longer to reach. And red, frankly, is we didn't get the action done, or we missed the target already. For foster youth, we just reported to our community those same things. And so we've actually dedicated a full-time manager to work with our foster youth and our homeless. That person has been working with our County Office of Education, who's been very supportive throughout this LCFF process, SCOE, Sacramento County Office of Education. We've been able to get some grant funding for more social workers. So more social workers have been in our district working on our 91 foster youth students. I feel we know them better by name and by need. And through this year's process, we're going to try to identify how can we reallocate resources now that we know our foster youth better to get them exactly what they need.
Pretty much ditto. We assign foster youth to foster youth coordinator, working in conjunction with our parent outreach coordinator to provide more mental health services, more community services at the school site.
At a county level, we've been able to have some dollars to put on the table when we meet with probation, mental health. We've been able to sit down and say, okay, let's multi-fund these type of services. And the services are very much like regular ed, but then on top of that, they need additional support. They need more technology support. They need access to computers that they may not have in a foster home, a place for them to go. We have we call the Dream Center, and it's for foster youth to come and for homeless youth to come and access shampoo, soap, food, clothes, computers, just a place to hang out and be for the day. That takes dollars. It also takes people there, so we house mental health, probation, ourselves, Kern High School District, to be there so the kids can come and access. They can talk about their transcripts. They can talk about issues that we're having. So it allows education now to have dollars to put in the pool, because with them particularly, they don't have necessarily the family base that we as parents give them those support services. So we as a community have to do it, and our community organizations do that.
Thank you, and I really appreciate this panel's perspective, seeing it from the front lines. And I know, as Mr. O'Donnell said, this is in the early stages, and I really appreciate what you said, that especially with the engagement, whether it's your parents or the community or certainly your teachers and faculty, that more and more is going to happen. And I can just say that, just my 2 cents, to hearing from people in the community. I have 2 little girls in kindergarten, so sometimes go to their events and talk to the teachers and principals, and people don't, it's so new.
It is.
And with all the changes with this and Common Core, that, certainly do hope that more and more engagement, but realize that every year it's going to, the next 3 years, probably snowball and snowball. So thank you. With that, we'll try to catch up. Just a note for people that want to speak, we're going to do this issue and the next issue, and then open up to public comment, knowing that people have specific things to address on these items.
I do have copies of an LCAP if you're looking for late night reading. I could give it to your sergeant.
Thank you. Okay, next we're going to hear issue number 2, and that first item, of course, was informational only. Issue number 2 is the governor's 2015-16 proposal on LCFF implementation. We'll have the Department of Finance, LAO, and Department of Ed. Okay, thank you. First, we'll start with the Department of Finance, outlining the proposal for 2015-16.
Good morning, Chair and members. Aaron Adavia, Department of Finance. Happy to present you with the administration's plan for funding implementation of the local control funding formula for 15-16. Thanks to increased revenues from Proposition 30 and California's recovering economy, the governor's budget makes a significant investment in K-12 education, with the LCFF implementation being among one of the very highest priorities. Specifically, the governor's budget provides over $4 billion in Proposition 98 general fund towards closing the gap between current funding levels and the targeted level of funding local education agencies will receive upon full LCFF implementation. This $4 billion will close about 32% of the 15-16 funding gap for each school district and charter school, whereas there is no remaining gap for county offices of education in 15-16. I would also like to note some related proposals that are included in this year's governor's budget. All remaining deferral debt is estimated to be retired in the current year. Approximately $1.1 billion is proposed to be allocated on a per ADA basis to address the mandate block grant backlog, and the maintenance of effort requirement for CTE programs is set to expire. With that, I'll keep my presentation brief, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. LAO?
Carolyn Chu from the Legislative Analyst's Office. We have no concerns with the governor's major LCFF district proposals. That said, we do recommend the legislature change the way in which transition funding for school districts is calculated. As you know, districts' LCFF funding is a combination of property tax revenue and general fund support. There are some districts out there, however, whose property tax revenue is sufficient to fully fund their LCFF transition allotments, as well as even their full LCFF entitlement. So there are districts out there, which we call basic aid districts, who receive enough property tax revenue to already be funded at their LCFF targets. On paper, however, the state does not treat these districts as being fully funded under LCFF. Instead, we treat them on paper as being in some transition, when in fact they actually get all of the funding. So we recommend the legislature change this accounting practice to treat basic aid districts as fully funded under LCFF, since they do receive the revenue. This would only change the amount of property tax revenue that counts towards the Proposition 98 guarantee, which is also made up of state general fund revenue and property tax revenue. This would not change the amount of funding going to these districts in any way. Making this change would reduce the general fund obligation to Proposition 98 by about $400 million in the budget year, which could be used for other legislative priorities. If the legislature does not take this recommendation, we believe the governor's budget actually underestimates the amount of property tax revenue counting towards the guarantee due to the transition of basic aid districts. And as a result, the estimates for local property taxes would need to be increased by about $110 million over the current year and budget year if our recommendation isn't taken. On the County Office of Education side, we discovered there is an LCFF provision that allows county offices of education to receive funding above their LCFF allotments due to the growth in their local property taxes. We have 3 concerns with this provision. The first of which is that this provision goes against the state's longstanding practice of not allowing county offices to benefit from growth in their property taxes. So unlike school districts who do keep their excess property taxes, they have always kept them. Historically, county office property tax in excess of their funding target has been redirected for other state activities. So this provision, this current LCFF provision, allows county offices to actually benefit from some of the growth in their property taxes. Second, this practice is inconsistent with the intent of LCFF, which aims to fund all county offices of education similarly and erode historical funding differences across the counties. Our third concern is that this provision actually increases the cost of the local control funding formula long term for county offices. So we recommend revising this statute to stop providing additional support that only benefits certain counties, and this support comes in the form of property taxes, not any changes to the statewide formula for county offices of education. Making this change would free up about $40 million in the current year and $60 million in the budget year for other Proposition 98 priorities. If the legislature chooses not to take this recommendation, we believe the governor's budget actually underestimates the cost of this provision, such that an additional $16 million would need to be provided to county offices in the current year, and an additional $36 million in the budget year over what the governor's budget provides.
Okay. Thank you. Department of Education.
Good morning, Monique Ramos on behalf of the Department of Education. So the department is supportive of the governor's budget proposal to add an additional $4 billion to further implement LCFF. He's also supportive of the additional dollars proposed to go to county offices, depending upon decisions you make here, and the increase in the COLA. We do have some concerns with the LAO's recommendation related to basic aid districts, but at this point, the Department of Finance and LAO have agreed to sit down and try to work out a compromise. So we'll update you once we've had those meetings.
Okay. Thank you. Do we have any questions or comments on this panel from committee members? Okay. None so far. I'll start it off. I wonder if Department of Finance and or the LAO could comment on the foster youth issue. And we talked about this with the last panel. And well, first, it's kind of tricky because if you look at the 3 pots with low income, NELL, and foster youth, by definition, probably the majority of foster youth are low income. But as the superintendent from the TOMAS noted, that the services you provide are a little bit different and enhanced. And so the issue as far as the definition in California law and the LCFF definition for foster youth doesn't quite match up, and so we're not quite serving all kids that we'd like to serve who are foster youth. So what's the administration think about that, and that is that something that you notice as an issue needs to be fixed, and maybe the analyst wants to weigh in as well. Start with
Thomas Todd Finance. So we are aware of the issue. We've thought about it, and we will continue to think about it. We have concerns about changing the definition to simply match what's in the LCFF right now, because to the extent you do that, you would actually create a fiscal liability to provide more resources for the categorical program. We are not, at this point, we're not supportive of growing categorical programs outside of LCFF, save for providing those programs COLA that they're obligated to receive through statute. So given concerns about the cost pressures that would occur on the categorical side, we'll need to take a sort of a finer look at the issue. just changing the definition outright immediately would have some financial implications that we're not supportive of right now.
Okay. Well, before we get to the LAO, I realize that there are financial costs, and it's estimated 20 to 30 million. But I guess the question is, if we are going to specifically say in California under LCFF, we want to make a special emphasis in focusing on these kids, and we all know the outcomes if these kids aren't very good, then why wouldn't we have a policy that deals with all of them as opposed to just a third of them?
Well, this goes back in some ways, to the deal that was struck on LCFF. The administration originally proposed to roll that foster youth services categorical program into the broader formula. There were people that had concerns about that because they wanted to make sure, the coordination services that are largely offered through this categorical program would continue to be offered in the same manner that they had been, all along. And so now, we're presented with this problem. As a result of holding that program outside of the formula, we are now dealing with the disconnect between definitions between two programs. As I've stated, we agreed ultimately, obviously, to the LCFF deal and the suite of categorical programs that would remain outside, of the formula. But we've said all along that we're not interested in expanding those programs on a policy basis. We're committed to funding those programs for COLA, things that are required, via statute. And so that's why I think we need to take, a harder look at this. Maybe there's a way for us to play with the definitions in law that don't automatically, result in that fiscal liability to the categorical. And so, we're committed to taking a look at that. The formula itself, this categorical is a relatively small categorical program relative to, the resources that we're investing in LCFF. So I think from the administration's perspective, I would say that we are fully committed to addressing the needs of these students, given our proposal to invest, more than $4 billion in a formula, and obviously, based on the way the formula works, that a substantial portion of that $4 billion will go to students who, are from foster youth backgrounds or English learners, or students that, qualify for a free and reduced price meal. So we think that we are investing in these vulnerable populations with that investment. So.
Okay. Analysts on this issue?
Sure. So we don't have a particular recommendation. I think we would just highlight that the definition under LCFF is more expansive. So districts can serve students who are placed with family members and those who are not. Whereas the county offices, currently the Foster Youth Services Program, which is the categorical program, is restricted to children who are not placed with family members. The Foster Youth Services Program, the funding only goes to 4 school districts in the state and about 52 or 53 counties. So the formula for the categorical itself is a bit historical in nature in terms of where it's going and how much is being provided. So it is something the legislature may want to look into more deeply for how to best serve the needs of those students.
Okay, thank you. Questions on this panel? Okay, what we'll do now is open up public comment for issue 1 and 2, knowing that the latter issues are a bit different. So maybe we can, are we going to line up over here? Is that what we're going to do it, or in the middle? Over here. So we can line up over here and try to keep your comment to 30 seconds or less, please. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Chairman McCarthy and board members. My name is Tristan Malhotra, and I'm from University High School in Irvine, California. I want to testify today about the local control funding formula. We really appreciate, my fellow students and I sitting right outside, really appreciate the focus on education that the state is giving us now with this new formula. But our state is still underfunded by $3,000 lower than the national average. And I feel that that is a growing problem because although it's being allocated a different way, our state as a whole still needs room to grow. And I feel that the LCFF might even magnify this problem because districts like mine, IUSD, are funded $2,000 under the state average. So although districts that are deemed in need are given more room to grow, districts like mine are actually inhibited by this problem. And I feel that every single district needs adequate funding, no matter how privileged they may seem. We all have needs. My schools in my district need modernization needs, and I thank you for your time. Thank you very much.
Thank you for taking the time to take some public comment. I'm Terry Walker. I'm the superintendent of Irvine Unified. And again, I think we all believe in the philosophy behind making sure students have adequate funding. It's just, in general, as our student most eloquently stated, we're really just dealing with an adequacy issue. So I hope that you continue to take a look at those kinds of things and try to make sure that we don't exacerbate that inequity as we begin to see the effects of the LCFF on districts that don't raise those additional revenues, that don't have those populations, but still need to meet the needs of our students if California is going to continue to thrive. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Chairman and members, Brian Rivas on behalf of the Education Trust West. Very quickly, we did a very detailed analysis of about 40 LCAPs. Our findings, major findings, were that 1, it's very difficult to understand LCAPs. 2, it's more difficult or very difficult to see how districts plan to improve or increase services and use supplemental and concentration funds. It's a critical part of LCFF, the recognition that some students need more, therefore they should get more. As far as we can tell, there's no systematic way for the state to judge whether or not that's happening. Please take steps to improve the disclosure and reporting of those supplemental concentration dollars. And we support, on a separate matter, the request that you align the definition of foster youth. That's an effort that's being led by colleagues at the National Center for Youth Law.
Thank you.
Enrique Roacho on behalf of the California Association of School Business Officials. Definitely want to state that we agree with Mr. O'Donnell's comments that LCFF implementation in the long term should be focused on outcomes. CASBO members are definitely committed to ensuring the long-term implementation of LCFF and recognizing that schools will only be restored to their 2007-8 level. There's definitely a need to keep that in mind in the long term as school districts are being restored. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Karen Sweat, and I'm a founding member of Making Sense Work. For about 10 years, we have been teaching parents at school sites, school site counselors, school site principals, parents and teachers, and district-level people how to read the school site budget. We also work with advocacy groups teaching them how to read the district budget. We are currently monitoring expenditures on a month-by-month, and sometimes more often than that, expenditures on supplemental and concentration. I can show you exactly how much more we're spending of supplemental and concentration this year, this month, compared to last year, this month, or even the previous year. We support the concept of reporting this information up to the state level. It is critical. It is not the whole picture. It is a part of the picture, but if you follow the money, you can see how much more is being spent on the students for who this is intended.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning. Sarah Batches with the Association of California School Administrators. We would like to commend the governor for his continued support on providing funding for LCFF and for this committee dedicating conversations on adequacy. AXA also would like to support the alignment of foster youth services with LCFF. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Annie Fox. I'm the statewide education organizer for Pico, California. We engage parents and students in about 20 school districts across the state, representing about 500,000 families. I think these reviews of LCFF, which is a big milestone for our state, is an important moment, but I want to encourage the committee. We haven't heard from families today. We haven't heard from students. We haven't heard from parents. We haven't heard from foster caregivers. And when we're talking about decisions that are going to have huge impacts on those, especially when LCFF is committed to transparency of engaging families and students, our state level leaders need to be doing the same. Here in Sacramento, I also do local organizing with Sacramento Act, engaging about 90,000 families in the Assembly Members District. Transparency, real engagement is a huge issue, and we need to be discussing that and hearing all those perspectives. Thank you.
Good morning. Liz Guillen with Public Advocates. I'd like to thank the committee for the focus on LCFF implementation, particularly Assemblymember Ting's focus on what the state actually knows about how much it is spending to increase or improve services for the neediest students. The state has an obligation to ensure equal educational opportunity, and it can't fulfill that obligation if it doesn't have that information. We believe that the state should be requiring districts to be more transparent about their supplemental and concentration funding. The formula is a systematic state formula, and it's a state formula even now during the transition, not just at full implementation. So the state should ensure basic transparency about supplemental and concentration. And one last point, requiring this fiscal transparency does not reduce the flexibility that districts enjoy. They would continue to have flexibility in the use of those funds. Thank you.
Good morning, Chair McCarty and members. Brad Strong with Children Now. The Legislative Analyst's Office said it was difficult to determine how districts were increasing or improving services based on their LCAPs. They also noted that statute does not require districts to report all expenditures for English language learners, low income, and foster youth. We recognize that. Number of principles in the local control funding formula, obviously local control, flexibility, but also very much equity, stakeholder, and community engagement and transparency. It's hard to have conversations about increased or improved services when it is never reported how much additional supplemental or concentration funding each district receives. In your first year, it was a given. Districts needed to do their base calculation. You couldn't calculate type supplemental and concentration. We now can and hope that we will. I do also want to support the legislative analyst's distinction to distinguish between new and ongoing action.
Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Melissa San Miguel, and I'm with Foster Ed Initiative of the National Center for Youth Law. Just want to mention really quickly we're in alignment with Ms. Guillen's comments around LCFF transparency, but in particular I want to thank you, Assemblymember McCarty, Chair McCarty, for the inclusion of foster youth services in the discussion today and in the agenda. Foster youth are our state's children, and for a state to become involved, our children have experienced some form of abuse or neglect. Many of our children in care aspire to attend college and, have a career just like any other child. However, many do not receive the educational services and supports they need to attain their goals. Indeed, as the committee agenda discusses, the definition of foster youth in the state's foster youth services program is not aligned with the definition of foster youth in LCFF. This means that nearly 2/3 of the state's LCFF foster youth are not eligible or refunded to receive any education services or supports. Currently, the youth who are eligible for FYS are children placed in non-relative settings like group homes or foster homes. The research has shown that children do socially and emotionally better when placed with their relatives, and child welfare's philosophy has also sifted per federal guidelines, and so we encourage the legislature to align the program. We're aware that the administration may be considering elimination of FYS, and we have foster youth here that can speak to the importance of needed services, education services for youth in care.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Vanessa Hernandez. I'm with California Youth Connection. We represent current and former foster youth across the state. For decades, FYS has been the liaison and navigators of both Department of Social Services and Department of Education. This program is essential and it complements LCFF really well as they understand both systems and they understand the unique needs of foster youth. After a year of LCFF advocacy efforts on the ground, we are seeing that a lot of districts do not understand the unique needs that foster youth face, and that when partnerships with FYS coordinators have been developed, that's where the strength of the program is. I grew up in care myself, and it doesn't make sense that if my younger brother was placed with my auntie, he would not be eligible for educational services that I'm entitled to because I was in a foster home. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Ashley Beecham, and I'm actually a former foster youth also, and also a former member of California Youth Connection, and I'm currently working as the support staff for Glenn County Foster Youth Services. I was a teen mom too, and without the support of foster youth services, I would have probably never made it to college. I moved 4 different high schools my freshman year, 15 schools in total from kindergarten through 12th grade. I really owe a lot of my success to the support I received through those services, and I've seen a lot of what these services can do now that I'm working for them. We've been able to provide site liaisons on our school campuses and one of our entire districts, and that has helped bridge the gap between child welfare services, foster youth services, and now the schools to provide better wraparound services for our educational support for our students. So I just want to let you know, I heard you hammering away about what it's doing for foster youth in our county. It's doing a lot. So thank you.
Hello, I'm Jason Lowe. I'm a former foster youth, and I'm with also California Youth Connections, and I'm a mentor at a middle school for foster youth, and my role as that mentor is to provide them with knowledge and help them cope with the daily life of being a foster care while being at school. And I figured out and I learned something, and a lot of it, and what I learned was that these foster youth don't know what basically their rights are or their foster youth services are. So I'm trying to help them tackle these obstacles by helping them overcome it. But it's very difficult for me because I'm a mentor, and our county foster youth services is like really low on the knowledgeable end. So I'm doing as much as my time as a volunteer helping these youth learn what they can do. And I'm also learning from them as well. And it's kind of a help in hand. But as seeing these services, they are a great service and they are great provided. I wish I could have had them, but unfortunately I didn't. So I see that now that I'm trying to get these services, I see how much more of an importance this is for these youth. Thank you.